Welcome to Public Speaking with Peter George. Do you want to be calm, confident, and credible every time you speak in public? Then stay tuned as Peter and his guests discuss public speaking tips, techniques, and tactics that help you increase your impact, influence, and income. Here's your host, Peter George.
Speaking in front of others provides you with the opportunity to influence and inspire them. But do the words you choose help you accomplish your objectives or undermine them? In this episode, Terry Short shows you how to choose the right words so your audiences are clear about your intentions. Through coaching, speaking, and facilitating, Terry has inspired countless physicians, staff, senior leaders, and middle managers to harness the power of empathy and personal relationships. Terry is the author of The Words We Choose, Your Guide to How and Why Words Matter, which was awarded the 2020 American Book Fest finalist. She has been interviewed for various mediums, including Fast Company and NPR. And now she's here with you and me. Hi, Terry. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Peter. Thanks for having me.
Terry, people in marketing and sales and numerous other professions understand that the words they use matter. What are your thoughts on how word choice impacts public speakers?
Gosh, I think it has a huge impact. And from two perspectives, really, from the words they choose for themselves in preparation, right? And what I call their personal podcast, what's going on, that narrative gone on in their head. You know, we have our headphones on every day listening to podcasts. The reality is you've got a podcast playing there 24/7 too. So you get to choose who's on it and what's playing. Are you inviting your mother on today? Are you inviting the CEO of the organization you're going to speak to? Are they on and what are they saying? And so those word choices are very important from the preparation standpoint. Then the flip side to that is when you are presenting, choosing words that represent your intention. And sometimes the speaker intends to be directive and assertive. And so those word choices must align. And then sometimes they want to be more from a position of inviting and encouraging. And so how we choose the words make the difference as to whether or not you're meeting that objective.
Very much like if you were speaking to someone, say a family member, and the words you choose may have them feel one way as opposed to another, right?
Exactly. And they may ignite, right? Here's what I keep in mind is that words can minimize or limit, or they can inspire and enhance. So I'll tell you a little bit about words that minimize people when they are told to do something. You must do this. You should do this. That's what I mean about if your intention as a speaker is to be directive, then you might be using those terms. I would encourage that one considers the impact of using those terms. Does it minimize the receiver of the information? Does it minimize what they're absorbing, what they're taking in because of it being so directive?
What words are at the top of your list of words they should or maybe not use?
Top of my list is a hot one these days, Peter, is but. The word but. If I could wave a wand, I would just eliminate the word but. And right behind it, however. However, I heard someone say once is that however is but in a tuxedo.
It's a fancy but.
That's right. It's fancy but. Here's the thing about but. I think about but as the scissors. But truncates, it severs, whatever the person's saying or the thought that's happening, even when you're the speaker. So if I'm the speaker and I say, I'd like to tell you about this, and here's something that is important to know, but so on and so forth, I've just diminished what I was speaking about or what I wanted to tell you. So if I say, here's an interesting information that I would like to share with you, and I will illustrate how it changes things or what the impact is or what have you. And so we just so automatically choose but and can so simply replace it with and. And it's an affirmative, it's collaborative. When I'm bridging with the word and as opposed, so end's the glue as opposed to but is the scissors.
And a lot of people use that. You think of improv. Improv is yes and.
That's right.
Which teaches you use and. If you try to do improv with Yes, but the other person would not know how to play off you.
Right. And I think about that for speakers. So I do a lot of public speaking myself, and particularly when you engage the audience. And, so often the audience sometimes they'll throw you something that you think, oh, does not fit, does not fit. Where do I go with this? And you might be inclined to say, but what I was really talking about, or my point was, if you do that yes and, then you're pulling them into the conversation and you're extending it, even if you're going to now move it to where you really wanted it to go in the first place. They say something kind of absurd or disconnected, and you say, yes, and how I see that referring to this situation, and you're the connector. So great speakers are able to do that effortlessly.
A lot of politicians should learn that.
Indeed.
What are some more words?
I want to talk about some of these ones that minimize and we don't realize it. So I also do a lot of coaching, and whether I'm coaching or I'm here listening to speakers, I hear these, let's call them filler words that minimize. Pretty seems like a simple word to throw in there, but when you say, I'm pretty sure, or I'm pretty confident, well, are you confident or aren't you? So why would you say that? Another one is just. I hear speakers say, well, I'd just like to share with you some of the data behind this. Why minimize it? Why minimize the sharing of the data? Why not say, and next I will share with you, or I'm sharing the important data with you, as opposed to just, because you've now given it less importance.
Why do so many of us do that?
It's a good question. I believe that particularly when we're speaking, we don't pause long enough. So I'm a very rapid speaker. I use my hands and I go at the speed of light, and I work very hard to think about what I'm about to say. And that's an effort. And so I think oftentimes we don't practice the pause. We don't have that built in. And so we just come out of the gate and throw these words in. As well, some people practice the use of what I call habitual words. So they're words that are just a part of their vernacular and they come out all the time. Just. I know a lot of people who throw just in there all the time, and it doesn't only diminish their message, it diminishes them in a way. I'm saying to you that what I have to say is just this, maybe not as important as I really think it is.
You see that in emails all the time. I'm just checking in. I'm just following up. I used to use just quite often, and it was called to my attention a long time ago that, Peter, you have to stop using the word just.
Well, I'm glad someone called that to your attention well before you connected with me. What breaks my heart is when I hear individuals insert just when they're describing their position, their contribution in life. I often hear, I'm just the executive assistant. And I think about the bubble that's really around that person's head. That is, I make sure that these two executives get to all their meetings on time, have all of the preparation that's required in order for them to excel. That's what the bubble would say above their head. And they're minimizing it by saying, I'm just this.
I don't get the corner office. I'm not the one making all the money, the big decisions and all these things. And let's face it, a lot of us know that's the brains behind the operation. And if not the brains, they're the ones who make it work.
That's right. That's right. So there's no reason to add to that, add to your own sense of what you are contributing in a minimizing way. Another one is the word think. So to me, it's similar to just, it's more habitual. And sometimes leaders will say, in an effort to maybe endear themselves or not appear to be too directive, they might say, I think we're likely to meet our goals this month, or I think we're going to be able to do this. Now, what always goes through my head is, you're getting paid the big bucks, right? So own it, own the message, and eliminate think and lead with what you believe to be true in a more assertive, confident manner. Same thing with speakers. Speakers are on the stage not so much to be in a place where I think this, or I'm pretty sure, or I might. They're on the stage to assert what their expertise is or what their knowledge is.
You can't be an executive, say, and go into the boardroom and say, I think.
That's right.
You'll be
That's
looking
right.
for another job.
Exactly.
This is fun. What other words do you have?
I have a word combo that I think is very important. People automatically say, I have to, whether or not they're saying, I have to pick the kids up from school this afternoon. We have to implement this new quality measure because the government says so, whatever. So we have to this, that, and the other thing. And I propose that we change that to I get to. It makes you think about where you remove the burden. So even when I say, let's say I'm going to pick up one child, and doing that makes me late for soccer practice for the second child. And I get there and I say to that one, well, I or even before I go, I say, I have to pick up so-and-so, or sorry, I'm late. I had to do this. I'm implying that's a burden. It's a burden. Now, some parents might think it is a burden to pick their children up after school. What we need to be more sensitive to when we're implying that burden and it's not our intention. If that's your intention, fine. Tying your words more directly to what your intention is. So I get to pick my children up after school. We get to comply with this quality measure because it's been proven to save patient lives, or what have you. I coach some large organizations that have had some, reductions in staff. And that's anything that's disruptive in the corporate world. And sometimes you're on the big stage given that message, right? And we're so inclined to say, we have to move in this direction. And particularly if I'm a senior leader, thinking about the message that gives. When a senior leader says, we have to do this, it implies that someone else is behind the decision, right? That I don't know, is that the man behind the curtain in Oz who's saying that we have to do this? So it's a matter of owning the message and figuring out how to present what you really intend to say without implying that burden or without implying that it's an edict from someone else.
When I talk to speakers who are nervous, I always say, put it in your mind that you get to do this. Not everybody gets to go up on stage and address 100 or 1,000 people, whatever it might be. But you get to.
That's right. Thank you.
No one forced you to do it. You actually get to do this.
That's exactly right.
Right? Which makes you part of a group that's an extremely small percentage in the world.
That's right.
And that's a great opportunity.
Yeah. And on some hand, Peter, that might cause someone to think, when they think about that small group and that they get to do this, it could cause angst. But if they think about it and say, I get to do this and it's a privilege, that's what I mean is that what's really behind the intention and the sharing of my gifts or my skills, if it's my intention to present myself or share my gifts and skills, and I get to do that. And there's honor and privilege associated with that. I feel the same way about senior leaders and what they get to do in the serving of others on their teams.
Key phrase, serving of others.
Two key words that I would offer, particularly to speakers, is serve and invite. So I try very hard when I'm on the stage to think about what I want to invite the audience to do or to participate in or to contemplate, to think about. And also, I'm always conscious of how I serve their needs and how I might encourage them to serve the needs of others. So I weave those words in intentionally.
I love that word, invite. It's funny when you said that, the first thing that came to mind, if I have a call to action, I often use the word challenge. I challenge you to do this. I kind of like invite. And I can see either word for different occasions. I'm thinking of a few right off the top of my head where invite would have been a much better choice of words.
That leads us somewhere else in this topic. That broadens your span to the audience, right? It broadens your reach. So we talk a lot today about inclusion. And if we're really going to be inclusive, we're going to invite people into the conversation. We're going to invite them to ask questions and to understand. We talk about creating psychologically safe spaces and environments of communication. When you use those words, invite and serve, you're heading much more into that direction, into that space.
Do you have other words that would enhance what a speaker says?
A few for individually for speakers is, besides invite and serve, is encourage, recommend. When you're speaking about what you're going to do, I wish to, I intend to, I desire to. And that's a little different than I'm going to, right? There's more impact associated with that.
Are you ready to work directly with Peter and develop your public speaking skills? Then schedule your free call with Peter at petergeorgepublicspeaking.com/call. Again, that's petergeorgepublicspeaking.com/call for your personal coaching and support. Now back to Peter and his guest.
What made you decide to delve this far into word choice?
As I've gone over the decades of being in leadership and speaking to others and such, I've just always had, I have always had it. See, that's an important thing. No one's perfect. And what I like to say is you can't unsee the list, right? You can't unsee the list, or you can't unhear this podcast. Now you'll be thinking of these things, and it doesn't change overnight. Personally, I had it always in my head. I'd hear, let's say, a president speak, or years ago, I would hear a public figure speak. And I'd think to myself, that is not what they intended to say. The words they chose led me to hear this, but what I believe they intended was this. And so I've always been maybe a little, let's go with critical of the words that people would choose. And I thought, well, I'll do something about that. So that's what led to me to writing the book. And I also was quite taken back by a quote by a gentleman named Tom Kenyon. And he said, we create the world by how we communicate with each other, how we speak to each other. And I went, gosh, that's right. That's right. You know, we all have that. We bear the responsibility of the environment we create. And so much of that is impacted by what comes out of our mouths. So it was important to me to start to think about the connection between what's in my heart and what's in my head, pausing long enough to ensure that what's in my heart is my intention, and pausing long enough to ensure that what comes out of my mouth has those two aligned.
Do you ever see a speaker use words that they didn't give thought to and it had a terrible impact on their presentation?
Yeah, I absolutely. And I've felt that way personally when I've, not on the big stage because, you're so well prepared, but hopefully, but in smaller circumstances when I've thought I haven't portrayed my message as I would have liked. And that gets back to that preparation is key. The more prepared you are, obviously, the more you're able to adjust as you go. And I think that's where people get into trouble, is that when there's a little bit of a pivot that takes place in a speech and you're thinking on your feet, that's mostly where I've seen it, where people are thinking on their feet and clearly, in my mind, what comes out of their mouth is not aligned with what they intended.
Any other words, any other idiosyncrasies we may have as speakers with the words we choose that don't help us out or that could help us out?
I'll back up a little bit and go big picture. In the book, I do pretty much the entire first chapter on this concept that I've brought up a few times about what's your intention, and to be more clear about what you intend to portray. So as a speaker, maybe you have 3 objectives, 3 outcomes from this amount of time that you're speaking. And so for those objectives, what is your intention, sort of maybe minute by minute or, 30 minutes by 30 minutes, depending on your time, and tying that intention to your values. So it's something we haven't spoken about before, but so many individuals don't know what their own core values are. And so start there. And once you clearly understand and own your own core values, you're likely to be much more tied to what you intend to say. So that would be my recommendation is that all speakers, all leaders pay much more attention to what they value, and that informs their intention.
Why do you think it is that so many of us don't do that? Is it that we just don't think of doing it, or is there something holding us back?
That's a great question. I believe that we already think I show up every day. I am living my values. But when someone says, "Oh, really? What are they?" the average person goes, unsure. And we have company values and we have beliefs. And there's just some gray area there that when you refine it, when you go in and refine that gray area, the clarity that comes out informs your word choices. I have one more to leave you with. This might be a good segue. Will be a good segue. If and when I think about, particularly this last 18 months, we live in the world of if we travel again, and if I go here, and if I do that, that's not helpful. That doubt and that uncertainty is not helpful. So changing that up to when we travel again, when I do this again, when I return to the office, there's optimism and there's positive outlook that serves in so many other ways. And so when a speaker approaches the stage and thinks of all these different words and they're whirling around, to have the confidence to know that they will choose wisely and be aligned with their values.
And you'll see people use those two words intentionally, especially like a comedian may say, if we ever get to travel again, they're poking fun at the fact that we've been locked down a good portion of the last year or more, as opposed to someone else saying, when we get to do this, because this has to end sometime.
That's right. That's right. Well, and to take that further in the workplace, many, many leaders are speaking in terms of if out of that uncertainty. To be fair, there's a great deal of uncertainty, right? I get that. But if I'm the person listening to the leader and they're always speaking of if this, if that, even if we meet our goals, if we're able to do this, it doesn't provide me with the foundation of certainty that I'm looking to the leader for. It doesn't feed my need for how they're serving as the leader. So it's really another one just right up there with but and and have to and get to consider. It's not but I believe can be switched out 98% of the time. The if when is more likely a 60-40 situation where it's not appropriate all the time because there can be some ambiguity. What I'm proposing is that we're offering more ambiguity lately than is helpful, than is useful.
You'll never hear a football coach say if.
If we win.
Right, if we win. That's not encouraging.
Exactly.
Terry, where can our listeners learn more about you, your book, and your online course?
They can go to shortgroup.net. That's my website. The book's there. The first chapter you can download for free. And the online courses, the link to go there as well. And of course, the book's on Amazon and all Barnes & Noble and all the other places that one would buy a book.
And I have to tell you, I'm going to buy your book because I know there are words I get caught up on. And as you bring it to light, it's just like, oh, there's a much better choice.
Well, I appreciate that. I'm in this to change how we communicate, one individual at a time, Peter.
Terry, thanks so much for being with us today and sharing your expertise.
Thanks. It's been my pleasure.
That's a wrap of another episode of Public Speaking with Peter George. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to your favorite podcast. Tune in Monday when you'll hear another episode of Public Speaking with Peter George, and again Thursday for your next episode of Quick Bites, public speaking tips and techniques you can digest in 5 minutes or less. Until next time, remember, when it comes to speaking in public, you've got this.